who are the thought leaders and how can we in Brattleboro be part of that conversation? And much like many things in COVID, someone said something on a call today that really resonated with me, which is COVID has made the future arrive faster. So now I feel like my entire thought process is always about where our downtown communities headed now. I've always seen my role, whether it was pre-COVID or now or post-COVID, I've always seen my role as a second set of hands or a diehard advocate or even a missionary for our downtown community. And I've always seen our downtown communities as a hub, a meeting spot, a connector, and not just about commerce. And I find that that is something that I like to say up front, because when you say downtowns, you usually feel like the conversation is framed around businesses. So I will say that up front. However, this conversation is focused on businesses, and also I would say, especially in Vermont, our community organizations as well, so nonprofits. I'm excited to share a couple stories, and one thought, I do want to know, does Addison County have Everyone Eats yet in your area? Okay, and where is your hub?
The Bar Antidote in Virgins just started servicing meals on Monday, but they just got up and running with that, yeah.
Oh, great. And do people on the call know about the Everyone Eats program? Okay, so I might not go there. All of the work that we have done in COVID has all really come from a really strong foundation that I didn't quite know that I was forming as I was forming it, and I named it the One-to-One Project. And the premise of the One-to-One Project that we started sometime in March was the idea that there was an amazing amount of information being thrown at you all the time in webinars that you were being invited to, and yet it wasn't going to cut it. And there was a group in my town that came out that said people are going to close and that's okay. And I had this visceral reaction of, well, it's sort of okay, or not. And so I said, well, what if we actually do the reverse and set a really probably lofty goal and say, we want to make sure that we save 80% of our organizations and downtown. And how are we going to do that? And as I was listening to these webinars, it just wasn't enough to cast a wide net. There is a role in webinars and a role in casting a wide net. And then there's also a role in one-to-one contact and walking somebody through things and being by their side. And so the One-to-One Project was born with the idea of, we're going to save 80% of our organizations and businesses in our community. And we're going to do that by intense interaction and follow up with them and close relationships. And so we have been able to actually say that we've had a measurable impact because we had repeated ongoing personal contact, and we recorded it all in a giant spreadsheet that's sort of overwhelming at this point, because each time an economic relief package or program or grant came out, we were on the phones saying, okay, we have you down as having less than 5 employees. And so what this means is you can apply for the Embrace grant, and this is and going through it. And so the other thing that this One-to-One Project gave us is real-time understanding and knowing what our businesses and organizations needed. And out of that came some projects that I thought I would share, 2 of them. One is the dining parklets. And I know that, do you guys have any placemaking parklets, anything like that in your area? Okay, so I like to say that in a moment like COVID, it allows people to say yes more. And so dining parklets would have never flown in our community. to take up parking spaces for a private business just wouldn't have. And yet we had 12 dining parklets pass our select board. And those dining parklets went in, taking up 2 parking spaces each. And the reason why this was one of the projects that came out of the one-to-one was because as soon as the governor opened up the ability for people to dine indoors, we had in real time the answer of, there's no way I'm opening up indoors. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not going to bring my staff back. So what on earth can I do? And so in bringing outdoor spaces to our restaurants, we now have access to incredible data. The opening weekend of one of our parklets, instead of being 90% down, which this business was compared to 2019, he was only 45% down. Another example of the project is, you know what, I can't not mention it, is Everyone Eats. It is, so this is the other project I'll just mention because it's hitting on all cylinders. So Everyone Eats touches upon 3 different sectors, and that is feeding your community, saving the restaurants by purchasing meals from them, and then the third is protecting our farmers and food producers by a carve out of 10%. So all Everyone Eats meals has to have 10% be locally sourced. And just to give you another data point, knowing that our business is curbside, when to the common public might look like it is saving the restaurants, it is absolutely not in many circumstances. And 2 out of 9 of my first Everyone Eats restaurants, we've been doing it since August 3rd, brought their sales up by 80% because of Everyone Eats. They were able to pay their landlord because of Everyone Eats. And one of the key essential parts of this program is that they are able to rely on it for an extended period of time. It's not a one-time grant influx of money, which is great, but it is not a one-time. It is, can I count on you? I personally schedule it a month at a time. Can I count on you for 300 meals a week? And you can count on this money. And so with this program, we are giving out 850 meals a day, 4 days a week. And we're writing checks for over $25,000 to our restaurants every single week. So those are 2 examples that I would have. And I would just again say, I feel like any other example I give all comes from the social capital that we gained in the one-to-one project of standing by our community, right next to them on the phone, and understanding from their words, not the newspaper reports, but their words, what exactly they needed. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. Really appreciate that. I thought we were going to get a little about singing hand sanitizers. No mention of that, huh? Maybe we'll get to that later. So at this point, and I know we've had a couple folks join, just to remind folks of how we're going to structure this conversation. We're going to start by just thinking about what are some of the challenges and obstacles for business support success at this point, and then what is a vision look like in terms of a healthy business community, a healthy business environment in Addison County, and then we'll shift over and think about sort of what are some great practices going on either locally or that you've seen elsewhere, and finally what are some needs that you want to communicate, whether those are local needs or statewide needs or regional needs. So let's start on the challenges front. And if you just want to, when you, we're a small enough group that I can just kind of watch. You can unmute when you're ready to speak. And I may call on you if it feels like we need to do that, but that might not be necessary. And go ahead, when you speak for the first time, go ahead and introduce yourself. I think that would be great. as well. So what are some challenges? And let's just, again, to be clear, some of those challenges are going to be COVID-19 related and pandemic related, but the reality is, let's think beyond that, right? There's some challenges that were here before COVID and are exacerbated by COVID and will be here afterwards. So don't feel like you're stuck in the COVID-19 box. So what are some challenges folks are facing?
I'll go ahead and kick it off. Everybody else is going to say broadband, so I'll leave that to everybody else. But one of the challenges we're having is, you know, there are some common challenges among businesses, but it seems like there are some very specific challenges. You know, each business has some very specific challenges. So I liked what Stephanie said about the one-on-one follow-up. You know, businesses were being inundated with information for 2-3 months. Join this webinar, learn about this, and they're still confused. But so what we did is we had the privilege of having a Middlebury College intern this summer, and one of her jobs was to follow up with the 250 businesses that had been in touch with us over the 3 months, you know, March through May, June into June, and have one-on-one conversations with them to follow up with them and find out what exactly they needed. So, like you, we have a spreadsheet of all that information, and you know, and Sarah Kearns at SBDC has been doing that as part of her job. You know, individual follow-ups, one-on-one with our businesses, so we get a better idea of what the needs are. So just trying to understand what the individual needs are and discerning the trends and kind of setting those up the ladder to get resources to address those trends has been an ongoing challenge, but I think we've met it pretty well. We've let the legislature know who got left out, you know, from the first round of funding, and hopefully this next round will help those people out. But so that's one thing I want to identify, and of course broadband.
Great, thank you. Others?
I guess I'll go next. My name's Matt Byrong. I own Three Squares Cafe in Virgins. I'm also a state representative for Northwestern Addison County, Ferrisburg, Virgins, Panton, Waltham, and Addison. I would say most of the folks that I've spoken to in the Middlebury area and the Virgins area, at least downtown Village Centers, the biggest concerns right now, you know, everybody's kind of settled into this like new reality, lower headcounts on tourism, you know, how to navigate foot traffic with limitations in retail, dining, takeout. Municipalities, like Stephanie mentioned, have done things with, you know, taking over parking spaces for outdoor dining. Virgins did a good job getting, you know, extra picnic tables out in the town green. That's an auxiliary seating area for us. So the real concern right now that I've spoken to people in Burlington as well is what happens when it gets cold. You know, we've all kind of utilized PPP. We've utilized the first round of grants that shored everything up. It seems like a lot are kind of floating right now with this like impending uncertainty with what the weather change is going to bring. Really has everybody, you know, obviously on edge, curious as to what to do next. So, you know, ideas that have floated around is like, how do we safely use something like maybe like Town Hall Theater or the Virgins Opera House as possibly an auxiliary dining area if you can't have capacity limits for takeout. You know, we're just like spitballing ideas right now. But I'd say that's the primary concern throughout retail and our food service sector is what's the next move.
Right. Others?
I'm happy to jump in. I was Sarah from Vermont Small Business Development Center, and actually I was hoping really to be more of a listener because I always want to hear what the businesses are talking about. And really with Fred and Rob from the chamber, I think the three of us have been and others on this call, obviously, we've been on the front lines for a long time. And Stephanie, you probably know Deb Boudrio, my lovely colleague from down south. And so as Fred said, I mean, the challenges are so varied. It really depends on the business. And I think, I don't want to speak for any business. I think for SBDC and probably Fred and Rob, it's really just trying to make sure that people and business owners are aware of the resources, because there are a lot of resources, but also appreciating that it's very hard to be focused on maybe doing a couple months of rolling cash flow when you're not really sure if you can pay your bills next month. So, but I think some of the challenge is just trying to help the businesses think about the future. And a big part of the future is understanding these programs. And just because you got the money or can get the money, should you spend the money? And what happens when you spend it, and what do you have to pay back or not? And I think the state did a really good job with the grant programs. I think compared to federal, I think they were very clear, and you could get good Q&A and the rest of it. But still, I think a lot about the businesses that have taken on this debt, and how is that going to impact going forward? And of course, we're all still waiting for some good guidance so you can apply for PPP forgiveness. So I think it's just been very confusing, but I do think in the county we've had a lot of great resources. And I'm on the board of Town Hall Theater, so I've also seen the nonprofit side and just what it's like for the nonprofit. So I honestly can't remember your original question, but it's really just to say, I think that as Fred said, it's so different for each business. But I really just want to, hopefully with this group and Rob and Fred and others, just continue to help the businesses realize that there are a lot of resources, and that, we hope they will keep reaching out. And, we're always in communication. And there are some people that keep coming back for help, which is great. And then there are others that you just, you hear from once, but you kind of hope that we all have email lists. So you hope that they're not too overwhelmed, and that they are actually, getting the emails, and appreciating that, we all get a lot of emails, and sometimes doesn't feel helpful. But we have a recovery roadmap on our website. And so hopefully people are finding their way to those things. Anyway, I'll stop talking. That's what I had to say. But thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's helpful. I guess I'm definitely hearing a theme around just sort of that diversity of challenges, that for each business, it's really different, and it's hard to sort of have a uniform solution when you've got such a mix of challenges, it sounds like.
Responding to what Sarah just said,
Yeah.
The other thing that I really struggle with is the resources that are not replacing loss, and that is capital to invest in your business, because then that means you have to invest in your future, and you have to have confidence in your business in the future. So even something as simple as, I can't get tables and chairs back to the parklet. I can't get umbrellas and tables and chairs, or now in the colder season, I'm not willing to spend money on the heaters. And so that's where I feel like the capital isn't there, and that's almost where you definitely need grants, because if someone doesn't have confidence that it'll even work, they're certainly not going to take on debt to try to quote pivot. I have often thought we should have pivot grants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely an observation that I have in a number of these conversations, is that the level of uncertainty about the future is so high that it makes it really hard to make investment. And we see some businesses just sort of, some of them, it feels like they are looking actually out beyond the immediate crisis, and they see a pathway that's responsive to the immediate crisis, that they seem to have confidence actually is going to pay off when we come out the other side. And for them, like, some of that's maybe just a matter of confidence, but some of it is that they've just got that path open to them that they can see and they're creative about. But for others, they can't get past sort of that uncertainty, which is real. Like, I think it's from business to business, it seems to just really be different depending on circumstances.
Yeah, John, I can speak to that a little bit. This is Sadie Brightman. I'm the founder and director of the Middlebury Community Music Center. So speaking on the nonprofit side of things and the downtown side of things, just being right on Main Street, and also crossing over into the educational side of things, which we're auxiliary. We're not immediately entrenched in public school, but we participate and overlap with the educational goals of the community. So I think also for any number of businesses, it's a combination of both. It's seeing pathways forward and possibilities, ways to innovate and discover, just maybe even some really creative solutions given the constraints. But then met with that question about, is this the resource to therefore apply to those future ideas? Or is there, and with everyone being in such need at the same time, as far as communicating with our donors and appealing to our supporters that this is the time to invest in this change. So I think for us, I was thinking it might not be helpful to speak about what's going on specifically, looking for ways it might relate, but it sounds like the individual stories are what's most compelling right now. Just in their specificity, that's all we can go with. I would say that we're really fortunate because what we're doing right now is what we're doing with students, one-to-one. We're still conducting private lessons in any number of locations, and there's some things that are a real drawback, like the one-to-one personal interaction with student to teacher is limited. There's challenges in our industry, we don't have the technology to do synchronous playing together. So we can, we're coming up with all kinds of things, my turn, your turn, just different kinds of strategies for engaging more than one person, but we really can't do a lot at once. So that's just for us as a business, that means that we're prioritizing our private lesson students, and what we're kind of incubating right now are a lot of our group experiences, which is our classes and our camps and our, things that really bring a bunch of people together at once. And that, to me, the challenge is both mission-wise, that's just so important to us because we're fostering these musicians and we want them to function in a larger ecosystem with other music and have that expansion personally. And then not to mention what that does for our community, which is our whole aim and passion to, what this creates when people come together, and we're really missing the kind of energy around those performances and camps and all those kinds of things. So that's a path for us to be, that we're taking our time innovating. There's still some questions. There's a lot of possibilities, but it's a big limitation thinking just about the fact that we are in the center of Middlebury. We bring many communities together. So following the state regulations and just, what recommendations are out there, maybe it would be fine for a weekly lesson to take place with the same people, but to then bring multiple communities together into one shared space, there's things that just don't feel right about that. So some pros and some cons for sure, and I really appreciate the chance to hear what other people are experiencing. I think it's important. I just wanted to chime in for Middlebury to say that our downtown situation, you said not to limit to the COVID situation per se, the construction, the fact that everything's happening at once is really intense for many businesses, and I think it'll be interesting at the end of this week. Things will change a little bit, but I wonder if anybody else on the call is also, if that plays into decision making or just state of affairs for businesses right on Main Street as well or nearby.
Yeah, that's quite a project going on there in downtown, isn't it?
Yes, and I don't know if anybody's driven by, but the last piece is that the music center in the community house on the corner is also under its own construction. So just adding to the turnover. Just imagine what it's going to look like in 6 months. It's going to be different.
Yep. Thanks, Sadie.
Thanks.
Others want to chime in on the challenges front before we shift to sort of more of the vision of what's possible. Rob.
Yeah. Two things. I think one sort of barrier, one challenge is that the reality is that until something changes with the situation of the virus and people feel completely comfortable coming back into group meetings and downtowns and stores and whatever, in a sense, we're sort of plugging holes in the dike. We can find temporary solutions to get by, but we're always dealing with, less than perfect situations. So I think that's something we just need to deal with and admit, from time to time. The other thing, and I'm just looking around at the frame here. I noticed when we first started doing our meetings, we've done quite a few on recovery and whatever. We had lots of businesses, lots of, on the ground nonprofits involved in those meetings. And the longer this has gone on, since say March, less and less businesses. I look around here, Matt's a business owner. I'm not sure who else is a business owner, but it seems to be less and less. And it's more us who are organizing all these things that end up coming to them, which is a little disappointing to me because I really would like to hear more what the real challenges are. And so I guess a barrier for me is how do we really engage? And I think Stephanie said one-on-one. I think that's probably a lot of it, but how do we really engage these businesses in conversations to find out how we can best support them rather than just talking among ourselves? So that's a concern for me too.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And I mean, I live in Montpelier, and I think about the conversations I'm no longer having on the sidewalk or at the grocery store, right? I mean, just you don't linger in the aisles chatting anymore with your neighbors, and just think about, for all of us in the work we do, a lot comes from that in terms of feedback, and you just learn a lot from those things. And it's like that whole source of connection has kind of fallen out for most of us. Lawrence, I see you've got a hand up.
Yeah, I was about to jump in on something that Rob just said more eloquently. I am a board member of the National Bank of Middlebury from my time growing a business there, and now live in East Montpelier, and wanted to join tonight, and was stunned by how many service providers are on the call, outweighing businesses. And this is something that I see every day in my work with businesses. There's a lot of capacity constraints. It's just overwhelming. And how we figure out formats that will actually let them engage and get real questions answered. And so many of us are dealing with folks every day. We can't answer the question. There is no good answer, and helping people through uncertainty is what's necessary. But how we do that over the next few months, how we pivot as a provider community, if that's who's on the call, I think is really important. And for the businesses that are here, what would make your colleagues feel better supported and more engaged? Thanks.
Thanks, Lawrence. All right, so what are articulate for me sort of what a vision is. What does a healthy economy look like in Addison County? What does healthy business support? I mean, I think we just heard sort of both an obstacle, but maybe also a vision, which is like engaging. What does that engagement with business owners look like? How do we figure out what those venues are given the capacity challenges that they have? So describe for me a little bit, what's the vision of like a healthy economy look like for you all?
Well, on the engagement piece, I mean, what approaches have you used? Are you trying to get in touch with larger, smaller groups, I guess, sector by sector? Like, are you going after tourism, hospitality, and then talking to people in retail, and then possibly like manufacturing or whatnot? I mean, how is that contact trying to be made now that we can't really do more organic group meetings?
Is that a question for everybody?
Or
yeah.
like open forming, yeah.
And I think it's a good topic of like, what are some innovative approaches when we're now, when we're a little bit limited or constrained in terms of how we do those things.
Yeah, because I've just found myself with the legislative role, you know, especially in these moments like right now where we're still actively in Montpelier-ish via Zoom. I find myself providing information to people in a very fragmented fashion. It's all one-offs. It's like, oh, I heard this. Oh, I heard this. There's no like continuity or really focused like stream of information into dedicated buckets right now. So I think trying to figure out a creative way to navigate that inefficiency is probably one of the more useful things that could be done first.
Great.
So I think for us, it's something we got to look at going forward. You know, up to now, it's been a lot of response and recovery. So everything's been focused on, you know, trying to get information out to businesses. And, you know, so the forums have been revolving around that, where now I think we need to pivot, to use the current term, and figure out better ways to engage with smaller groups. One thing we've been thinking about doing is having, even before COVID, was to start CEO and CFO roundtables. We had a few going already. We had one on HR that we would hold quarterly throughout the year for HR professionals. We had meetings where we brought in speakers for workplace health and safety, you know, very focused groups. And I think we need to go back to that, and even though it's virtual, to do it that way, and maybe break it down into some sector meetings as well, sector-driven meetings or issue-related meetings, and more one-on-one. You know, just figure out a way, now that everybody's doing it, figure out a way to connect with single businesses one-on-one using these new formats. So it's definitely something we're going to we're working on going forward.
Do you all in Addison County see an influx of new residents? Like, is that something you're experiencing there? And is it something, I mean, I know it's sort of a mixed bag for people, right? There's a little apprehension about outsiders for some, but is that something that you all think about in a intentional way about how to bring those people and then keep them, let's say? Is that something that thoughts going on about?
I don't want to take the whole time, but we actually talked about this at our board meeting this morning. How can we intentionally take advantage of the opportunities of people coming here because of COVID? And a couple of our board members are realtors, and they pointed out that a lot of the people who are coming are still second homeowners. They're not bringing their families here. And of course, I'll let Rob speak to this because it's kind of his bailiwick, but you know, we can't market Vermont to outside except to certain counties so far. So that's a little hard to do right now, but there is an influx. It seems to be, I mean, I know here we've seen a huge influx in the number of people wanting to use our shared office space. And that's partly because there's more people around that need that, but it's also related to the poor broadband service that we have here.
Rob, I think you were going to say something, and then Lawrence.
Yeah, I'll comment to what Fred said too. We have seen sort of a bit of an uptick in requests for what we call our relocation packages, because we have a whole set of material that we send out to people when they contact us, say, well, we're thinking of moving to the area. Had quite a few of those lately. And, you know, hopefully these are people who are also going to work here as opposed to just have a second home. But that is a challenge. There's only so much inventory of homes And some of those lately are being taken up by short-term rental people. But I think we had just started through the state-of-state program, the statewide program, to focus more on that, get people to come and visit, and then help them to understand why they ought to stay. But right now, I think, yeah, we can't really promote that heavily outside the state. So that's, I think we just need to build the roots of that. But back to one of the other questions about how we sort of connect with people. One of the things I think is a challenge, and it's really more coordination, is that we're all trying to talk to the same people. So there are 3 downtown partnerships are having meetings with their businesses. With the chamber, we're trying to have, meetings with all the different hospitality or groups. There's a restaurant group, there's an inn group, there's and so all these different associations and organizations are all trying to, at the same time, meet with the same people. And so that is another reason why we probably don't see a lot of businesses here, is they can only do so many meetings, and they need to decide, well, who's going to benefit me the most? And that's the one they pick. And then they might read your email, but that may be the only way to interact with you. So that's another challenge, which is it's an Addison County challenge, I think, for all organizations to say, how do we come together and only get this person into the room once, as opposed to 3 times with 3 of us. So I don't have a good solution, but it's just more and more coordination than we've had in the past.
Right. Lawrence.
The Addison County and Rutland County realtors that I've been talking to in the last few weeks are continuing to experience a number of people buying sight unseen and above market, which has been really interesting. I think we have a potential opportunity for people coming into the area to also support businesses, and how we figure out how equity investments or purchases of local businesses can happen with some of these people who are coming with, frankly, a different decimal point or leading digit perspective. I think there could be an advantage there in how we make sure that they come into the business community, as we have some people who are going to necessarily be forced out through all of these challenges.
Stephanie.
Sometimes I ask the question of why I want to meet with someone instead of how, and oftentimes I think it doesn't need to be a meeting. I was in a talk today about the community Thanksgiving, and people wanted to do a survey out to the restaurants on what they could do. I was like, nah, just order something. Just tell them you need 850 servings of mashed potatoes. And so sometimes I think maybe we don't ask ourselves, or maybe it's a feeling of being bossy or something, of just do the thing for them instead of necessarily asking them to come to the table and be part of it. And that's probably not that PC, because we like to be collective and together. And then I just wanted to state the obvious, that in those first couple months when we were all able to get on webinars, we all weren't working. I mean, well, the business owners' doors were not open. And so just wanted to state the obvious, that that's why they were on the calls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think to some degree back to school has maybe made lives easier for families, but there's also some intensity to this first few weeks of school as well. I'm waiting for my kiddos to make a guest appearance at some point here. So, are there other Sarah?
Are you me? Sorry,
Yeah.
somebody's gonna just to pick up on Lawrence's thread. Something we talk about not just Addison County but statewide is, of course, this whole succession planning. So not only are we an older state where people are selling businesses, but in some cases this is going to push them to an earlier sale. So whether it's out of state or someone younger, but it's also, you know, interesting to think about just helping people with succession planning, which of course there are different groups that do that. And another theme that I think is starting to emerge and will emerge, and we're actually seeing this sort of statewide, is that people are actually going to be also starting businesses. There will be different opportunities. There will be things that close, but things that emerge. And also, maybe I'm too optimistic, but also just being ready for that. So we, in terms of engaging business owners, we changed our $129 4-hour in-person how to start your own business workshop to 90 minutes free online every 2 weeks. And we've seen actually some pretty amazing attendance. So I think just in looking at engaging with business owners, it's also not forgetting that there will be those starting and there will be those buying and selling. And just, you know, I know people on this call are aware of that, but anyway, that's just something I think about. And I also just wanted to say, I work with students statewide. I work with our young entrepreneurs starting businesses in college or college age. So it's just interesting to see how, that'd be another conversation, but how that age group is kind of viewing what goes on, and that they also see some opportunity.
Others see some opportunities, Sadie?
Yeah, just thinking, I'm sure many of us have had the conversation generally. I mean, just not even nationwide, but just globally, we're looking at so many underutilized physical spaces. And I'm not really presenting a solution here or a vision, but just kind of constantly aware of the fact that there are so many bricks and mortar opportunities, and this was a conversation even before the coronavirus with the schools and our lower population, and how, you know, what to do with some of the excess space within the public schools, or how to incorporate business, you know, interaction within that space, if that were to be one of the ideas. Just curious about the point just brought up about new people potentially moving to the area. And like you said, at some point, combination, maybe some reservation, but on the other hand, even from before the pandemic, something that I think it would be wise to embrace and really, you know, look for a lot of solutions in that possible population migration. I'm also just anecdotally hearing that, you know, farther south in the state, potentially more change in ownership, whereas up in Addison County, we may not be seeing quite as much as other parts of the state are seeing, as far as school numbers in schools and classes.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some regional variations. I didn't mean to interrupt if you had more, Sadie, but yeah, there's definitely some. I mean, there was someone from Dorset or Manchester, and they talked about 50 new students in that school for the year. So you're hearing in some places about that kind of, where the second home has become the primary residence for a lot of families, because they feel like it's just a better option for them. And so, but like that varies from place to place for sure. Sarah Audette.
Hey there. I'm Sarah Audette. I'm with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm the Events and Tourism Manager. I've been having internet issues this evening, so thank you, Fred, for bringing up the broadband. So all of that to say, I apologize if what I'm about to say has already been said. You know, one opportunity that I see is this could be a really great time for our downtown areas in Addison County to take business back that has been lost to Amazon and other large online outlets. It really bums me out anytime I need to get something and that I actually have to send my dollars outside of our community because whatever it is that I'm after actually can't be purchased here. Like recently I needed last minute dress shoes for my daughter because we had a funeral that we needed to go to, and there's no place to buy little girls dress shoes in Addison County. And I'm sure that there are lots of other products that you really can't procure here. And so people end up sending their money elsewhere. And so it'd be great if businesses can find a way to be really competitive and make their business models really convenient. So that way, hopefully we could start bringing some of those dollars back that we had lost over the years.
Yeah, I know in Montpelier, some of our downtown businesses have taken the leap and started to do delivery. sort of doorstep delivery. Is that happening in Middlebury or in Addison County where they're going to the customer to deliver?
I have heard about that. I mean, I think, you know, early on, the Vermont Bookshop was an early adopter of that, of doing deliveries. I think that's kind of fallen off now that, you know, people can get out and about a little bit more. I'm sure there's more happening that I just don't know about. It'd be great to see some more businesses pivot to doing e-commerce. I felt this way even before the pandemic happened, where maybe business hours aren't necessarily convenient. And it would be great to have more opportunities to shop online, even at local establishments.
Thank you.
Yeah, and adding to that, being e-commerce ready, you know, that's a huge theme. And I worked with a Middlebury College student, anyway, part of a program this summer, and he was actually looking at that. That was his business idea, was how do we connect all these Middlebury students who need stuff and who would like to shop locally. But it is a challenge, broadband, internet ready, and also simply inventory management. You know, we're talking anecdotes sometimes are more interesting, but I won't say what store, but I went downtown like twice just to get a thing that I needed. And I could see it in the window, and understandably they had reduced hours, but there was no way to get it. So it was very frustrating, to your point, Sarah. So I think about that a lot too.
Lawrence.
I think this does raise the question of how do we find the appropriate and best value opportunities for local businesses as opposed to what is unattainable. And this is a huge shift, right? We have thousands of SKUs at Danforth, and you know, they all fill a purpose for a particular customer. It's just a question of keeping everything in balance, right? And this is something we're going through that I find as a local shopper. You know, sometimes you're doing the local vendors a favor by just saying, I'm not going to expect this of you. There are some things that the internet is good for that are a burden to local businesses, and how we all make this shift, and how we, as you know, and I'm saying this again as service providers because of the balance on the call, but I'm interested in the Vermont businesses' perspective who are on this call. You know, what's the appropriate way of getting through this and having the best value come from what's local versus what's just, you know, let's just say that's gonna be easier and not worth fighting. And I find that to be an incredible challenge as I think about how to spend my money.
Thank you. All right, let's go. What are some promising practices that we're seeing? Where have you seen certain businesses really seize the moment? Or maybe it's some practices. I mean, you, Fred, and you, Stephanie, describe sort of that spreadsheet that you've built and the one-to-one connections you've had. To me, that's like a best practice. What are other practices and strategies that you've seen that you may have deployed or you've seen others deploy that you feel like have been effective?
I'll speak to what I can't say it's effective because it hasn't happened yet, but a group of a faculty member and some students at Middlebury College, along with Acorn and the Chamber, are starting an e-commerce website. And they're doing all the programming and laying it out, and it's going to be servicing restaurants, the farm community, and then eventually all of retail for all of Addison County. But it's starting small, still in the testing phase. I think that offers an opportunity for sort of one-stop shopping in the community. And they're trying to ramp it up a bit to help with college students that maybe can't get around to stores as much yet. So, but that kind of thing where we look for a group solution that, so not every business is having to start an e-commerce site or, you know, when maybe they can't. I think those kinds of joint efforts, and because this is a nonprofit, the cost to the business would be low, if not lower, certainly lower than trying to do it on their own, is something we need to look at. But again, I can't say it's going to take a while for buy-in from local businesses, but that kind of a framework, I think, is a good place to look. And again, it's going to be unique to every, you know, we have the benefit of having some really smart coders among the Middlebury College students that may not be available somewhere else. But I think it's a good direction.
That sounds promising. That's exciting. Yeah, I know, like Acorn, one of the things Acorn worked on was sort of working on the farmer's market model and really figuring out how to do sort of show up and pick up a pre-order as opposed to going around and shopping at different booths. As another thing I'd heard about as well, probably connected to that. Sadie, it looks like you were going to say something.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. I'm always looking at, I'm always interested in ways that resources can be shared among small businesses where possible. And also really great to be tapping into some of the talent around us with the college students. I think that's always welcome. I was just going to point out another small example. I love seeing the kind of the partnership that's happening between the Stone Mill and the Vermont Bookshop. How this, I guess this is also more construction related, but it might speak to some of the limited hours. A business who is willing to say stay open longer hours, but have a section designated for pre-ordered pickup from other businesses. That's a really different way of thinking about a space, and a really open kind of partnership-minded thing where, yeah, you can use these 4 shelves and we'll put your customer's name on them. They've ordered ahead, so it's all paid and everything, and we're going to be open these hours, and they know that, so they can swing by and pick it up. That opens flow of goods in a really interesting way. And I think it does a little more than that too, which is communicates this sort of friendship. Yeah, synergy, exactly. And I think that's back to the conversation around one-to-one and how do we engage with businesses. It just seems so like relationship oriented and who you know. So in the group who's organizing, is it a big enough group? Is it a wide enough net to cast based on the personal relationships represented in the group? And if not, who's somebody who would be tapped into those 4 businesses? Or we're lucky with our small networks in our small town that there's so much interconnectedness, but I think engaging people to a level where they would feel like, I could be an example. I would be more than thrilled to, with some kind of idea, contact another business, or talk to the town hall theater, Sarah, or just brainstorm with another nearby business on what we could do together. I think there's so many possibilities.
Yeah, we saw a lot of examples of that early on, with distillers sharing their alcohol to make hand sanitizer, the companies in town that do sewing, making masks. And then later on, when restaurants started opening up, sharing space, a restaurant that didn't do dinner, letting the other restaurant use their space during that time. So had a lot of examples of that here in Addison County.
Yeah, and actually another just local example to add to that, Fred, is Royal Oak Coffee, who very quickly pivoted to do an outside window, and they have great coffee. And 2 weeks ago, they did an Instagram survey of their customers to ask if they should extend hours. So I'm always a fan of, ask your customers what they want. They will tell you. And then, it may sound trivial, but they added an extra hour, to every day. It happened to be the hour that I wanted because they always closed at 2. And I think about that extra coffee closer to 3. But anyway, it was an example of, we're a small place, but they use social media. They're also good at it, to, ask your customer, what do they want?
Lawrence.
From a lessons learned perspective, Did any of you see anything that was a missed opportunity that stands out to you that we could maybe do things a little bit differently the next time, in terms of those business connections and those relationships that could spark a light?
Well, one thing we need, and it's related to the project Rob was talking about, is, you know, the project that he spoke about is the, you know, having a platform for businesses to put their products on, but we're missing the link, you know, the link of people, a company that can deliver those products. You know, I know many of our producers pivoted and stopped going to the farmers markets and other venues and started delivering their products themselves. So I think one of the things we got to pursue for our region, especially if this continues, is some kind of delivery service to help, you know, restaurants, stores, others deliver their products to consumers.
And putting my climate hat on, do it in an electric vehicle.
Of course.
But Fred, are you saying locally, regionally, or bigger? You know, what's the biggest need in that?
Probably it would work best locally. You know, like there was someone in Virginia, someone in Bristol, someone in Middlebury that was providing that service. I mean, Rob and I talked to one person. I don't know what happened with him, but I don't think there's someone that can cover the whole region.
He is plugging in with this new website to do delivery, but the regional side of it is more of a challenge, you know. So yeah, there's a new entrepreneur who's, you know, a one person, one vehicle. So clearly not enough bandwidth for the whole county, but it may take a few to spring up or to work together. But one of the things that Acorn also was doing when they started doing the farmers markets, they were delivering to a spot in Bristol and to a spot in Virgins as well, in order to sort of deal with that. And that's where we have to be creative in delivery. It's not that any restaurant, say, is going to deliver to every home in Addison County, but rather they might deliver to a localized spot. People would come and pick things up. The college is doing that now because their students can't leave, so they have a spot on the edge of campus where everything's being delivered for the students to then pick it up. And we can do that countywide as well, but it's going to have to grow over time.
Seems like we've been talking about this for a long time in this household, that something, it needs a new acronym, but something to the effect of a rural Uber. But this wouldn't be an Uber for people as much as it would be for goods. Wouldn't it be possible to activate a base of individuals who, for like a really low amount, would be willing to do some of the dispatch or distribution? That seems like it could be a real, again, like a person-to-person thing.
There is an app locally that this particular delivery person is using. It's not just a local app, but it's an app that's being used here. Shaw's, I think, is plugged into it for groceries. But anybody, just like with Uber, that has this, who signs up for the app, can then say, I'll take that delivery and go and deliver it. But right now, just like with Uber, there's very few people willing to jump on board. So it's going to take a lot more people, you know, ready to make a little extra money on the side, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Ruth, my intuition says maybe you wanted to chime in here. I wonder if you want to add something.
I got on the call to listen because I'm running for rep for my region. I'm in Shoreham to represent Orwell, Benson, and Whiting and Shoreham. And I've worked in education and libraries, and I run the little tiny Salisbury library. So I don't really have anything particular. And I've lived my whole life here in Addison County. like our library, I'm doing we're still closed, but we're doing tons of business with people ordering books, and I leave them outside. So it's actually much easier because they can pick them up anytime. So I've got many more and lots of homeschooling families and stuff using the library that way. I got deliveries from Pratt's when we were in Pratt's in Bridport, when we were in the heart of the pandemic, which was amazing, and just built such a good relationship with them. Our local restaurant, we used a ton, and they have, well, one of our 2 local restaurants is now like on a leave, Shoreham Inn. So that's very sad. Yeah, so I mostly wanted to learn and see, because I've been, in the education nonprofit, and I'm really in my towns, like agriculture and it's obviously, and dairy are the big things. I don't know, so I do think a lot about how like the schools and the free lunches that are being given out all the time, or free meals, if there was a way that we could connect those more to the local products.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
and also we're the town that just got a Dollar General too. It opened on Sunday. So.
You're not the only town that's just gotten a Dollar General. I feel like there's a few around the state of Vermont. So
yeah.
I tell you, our library, we pick up these packages of books, and for my kids, it's just like that next like 24 hours, their noses are just in all of those books. And it's nice because the librarian sort of does some of the selection for us. So there's surprises in there. And
you get a personal shopper basically.
Yeah. It's
and
like,
we're such a small town. They all know me and I know them. And also I've been doing lots of online. So we're going to add Canopy, the video streaming service. So this just might translate to other businesses. And then there's a statewide consortium that the libraries buy into to get free audio and ebooks. And then you can buy like an upgrade. So, that's obviously been a big part of what I've been doing. So that might translate to for-profit business world too.
That's great. Thanks. Lawrence, I see a hand up.
I think that Ruth makes a really good point that our nonprofits are also businesses, and how we look at the whole business ecosystem needs to be inclusive of farmers, of what we think of as commercial businesses, of nonprofits.
That's great. So quickly, I want to give one last opportunity for folks before I turn it over to the visiting team. We've got about 15 minutes left. The last question I want to ask is, do you have ideas for additional action, whether that's at the regional or state level, to address the challenges of an equitable economic recovery? Are there things, like this is kind of a moment where you can send a message to some of those, whether it's state players or others, around some particular needs that you see right now. So just one last question before we bring it to a close.
So one thing that I wanted to share, so we recently at the Chamber got together some of our tourism industry businesses to kind of talk about, what are the challenges that they're facing, offering an opportunity for peer mentoring and kind of helping each other out and identifying opportunities. And one of the questions that we asked them is, so these consumer stimulus programs, like, are they a game changer for your business? Because of course we're very excited about them, and they're kind of fun and creative and something a little exciting to do during this time. But they said, like, we will never, be upset about getting an extra $250, but it doesn't really make a huge difference for us in the long term. So I think that's just an important message. It was certainly, I think, very humbling for me to hear and recognize that, when we hear about, $500,000 or so being funneled into the economy, when that's spread out over, 1,500 businesses, that's not a whole lot of money individually for them. So I think that's just an important thing to note.
Yeah. Duly noted, most definitely. Fred?
One thing that I think still might be an issue and an opportunity is, unless there's this, a vaccine or something soon, is, and there had been efforts at the state level to, aggregate and do a major buy of PPE, sorry, not to be confused with the SBA program. And so if this continues, and it's not necessarily that it's not available, it's just that if there were an aggregated buy, a purchase at the state level, or then, there may be cheaper per unit. So as this goes on and the need for masks and other PPE expands, I think that's still a thing, something that should be thought about at the state level.
And it's just to be clear, because I'm not close enough to it. You're saying bulk buy at the state level to then provide to businesses and others. Is that what you mean?
Businesses, schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
All of us who
childcare centers. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And are you asking for that to be something that's just provided straight up, or just to actually utilize the bulk buy to keep the cost down?
Yeah, I think even if it's a Vermont company is the lead, takes the lead and does the purchase. But if it can be done organized at the state level, so it's a bulk purchase, then the cost per unit would be much lower. I know VMAC and others were working on it, but I don't know what happened with it.
No, and I mean, I'm seeing with the cafe, I'm seeing price spikes on stuff all over the place as I'm buying it in small, one case at a time, one case at a time. Just like the nitrile gloves for the kitchen are 3 or 4 times what they were pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So it's actually really, I mean, when you're buying 3 or 4 cases a week now because of the need, it's really racking up as an expense for a lot of people. So I get your point. I'll look into that, Fred.
Right.
I would
Others.
just add to that.
Yep, go for it.
I hope my connection. I would just add to that anything health and safety related to space and ventilation, just like projects that, I think I'm frozen. I'm going to come back. Hang on.
No, we can hear you. I can hear you. Others, while we wait for Sadie, we just lost Sadie. Oh.
Hi, sorry, I'm here.
All right, you're back.
Yes, just maybe larger projects that are related to outfitting your place of business to be considered safe and ready for use, ready for a variety of people, with air exchange being one issue.
Got it.
Older buildings, just speaking for us in particular, but I'm sure there are other examples of that.
Yeah, I know we saw some major investments in our schools in that category over the last few months, right? So can we apply that same reasoning maybe to other buildings? Others with some last sort of thoughts on additional needs or ideas before I give our visiting team a chance for some reflections. All right. Well, go for it, Sadie.
Final thought just on how do you reconcile individual difference with massive need across the board? If there were some ability to allocate a certain amount of funds for tech advancement, for health and safety, for whatever would that business determine was their biggest need related to the specific situation.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So you're saying give them some flexibility to use that judgment. Is that what you're saying, Sadie? Okay. All right, at this point, we're going to hear some closing reflections, and we are going to go in this order, which is we're going to hear from Stephanie and Fred, and then Chris Saunders, who's been waiting awful patiently as well. So just a few closing thoughts, I think, before we go back to the big group in about 8 minutes here. So Stephanie.
I think that my closing thought would be that exactly what we're asking the business owners to do, be innovative and pivot on a dime, is also what we're asking ourselves to do. And maybe we need to go wake up tomorrow morning and ask it a little bit louder of ourselves, because it almost sounds like we're quick to go back to the way we've always done things to a certain degree. And then also maybe at the exact same time, give ourselves a pat on the back for doing things to keep giving new things a try and see what works, because it almost sounded to me like we're doing both things at the exact same time. So, and then we all have such great ideas, to also not get fatigued at pushing those ideas out, whether it's to the state legislature or to Congress or to our communities. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephanie. Fred, you want to share any closing thoughts?
Let's see. So I know that, yeah, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and start thinking of new ways to connect with our businesses. It's just, we can't do it the way we've been doing it. And it's just been such a whirlwind 3-4 months of trying to keep up with, you know, all of the programs and resources and share them with our businesses, that, you know, we haven't had a minute to just reflect and think about new ways that we need to start doing business. And not only do we need to start changing the way we communicate with our businesses and figuring out all this new technology, but we got to look forward to, you know, what's going to happen and what are the issues going to be 4, 6, 8 months from now. We're going to need, not only do businesses need to pivot, but we need, the workforce is going to have to pivot as well. We're going to have programs to retrain people in new ways to do business. And there are going to be new issues that pop up, like difficulties with people being able to heat their houses. You know, hopefully people are starting to think about those programs in Congress and in the legislature. And, you know, we need to keep continuing to try to improve broadband, because that underlies a lot of the issues that we're dealing with, including trying to meet like this. Let's see, I had something else and I can't remember what it was. Oh, figure out ways to take advantage of the folks who might be moving here or setting up second homes here. We need to look closely at what we can do to take advantage of that opportunity. And not
in the best possible sense, not take advantage of them in the Carnival Barker sense. I think.
Oh, that's fine. No, that's fine. Yes, get them involved in the community and bring their families here and invest in businesses, transition businesses to new ownership, things like that.
I have to apologize. For those of you who don't know, Fred and I go back a long way, and I feel a need to give him a little bit of crap.
It's been a story of my life. I appreciate it, Lars.
All right, from Senator Leahy's office, Chris Saunders.
So, having grown up in Middlebury and having not been there for a minute, I'm just struck by just kind of falling back into this feeling of the passion that Addison County has for shopping locally. It's certainly an ethos that's pervasive around the state, but you know, we've gotten to the opportunity to sit in a lot of these groups over the past 6 to 7 months. And you know, just hearing this particular panel spend so much time focused on having local dollars circulate within the local retail and business community. I feel like other conversations have been focused on how do we support businesses that are selling goods elsewhere, or how are we, you know, it's not as inward focused, and that just I don't know, it was very cheerful to be thinking in those terms of how do we take it upon ourselves to lift up our neighbors and our local businesses. And I think one of the things I'll take away, particularly to talk with Senator Leahy about, in addition to some of the things that Fred mentioned, and certainly we are thinking about the basic needs that we have for folks in terms of making sure they have enough food on the table and fuel to heat their homes, is the impact of the direct assistance one-on-one for businesses. There's a slice of some of the technical assistance that's out there that gets funded by the federal government, but a good reminder that needs to be a top priority along with additional business aid, so that businesses can get that kind of specialized help. I think we are experiencing the same fatigue that you all are mentioning in terms of outreach to us. There was off the charts for March and April and May, and things have really kind of turned, and we now hear from maybe the folks that are really in trouble and at their last gasp, and making sure that there are resources there for that interim to help folks. I guess we keep using the word pivot, but reposition and organize so that they're well suited to take advantage of the opportunity that's here, or if they're not able to, how they can kind of keep the lights on until things are in a better place. So really enjoyed the conversation, and again, as somebody that grew up in Middlebury, just loved the local spirit that was pervasive throughout the conversation.
Great, thanks, Chris. So I will just say in closing, you're giving 2 hours of a nice, or maybe not so nice, Thursday evening to this conversation, and it's a measure of some dedication both to the community and the businesses that you serve, and to the state as a whole. I guess the other thing I would just acknowledge, Ruth, that you sort of described your relationship as blossoming with the local general store, Pratt's, I think is what the name of it is, in this time. And to me, I think I at least personally can think of those relationships that have actually blossomed weirdly in this time where we're not in the same space with each other. And so there's an openness, and that applies to businesses, that applies to so many things that we do. There's an openness to sort of new relationships and new ways of doing business. And people are understanding about this moment of sort of iterative experimentation that we're all in right now. We're all trying to figure things out on the home front, on the business front, in every front that we're living at this point. And so that actually, in a way, opens up possibility. And it's inspiring to hear how that is getting exercised in Addison County. So really admire that, and encourage you all. We're all going to go back to the big room now. I'm going to share in the chat just I'm going to paste in there some direction for folks about how to get back in if anybody needs that. So we're all going to do report backs at this point, so it'll be interesting to hear what happened in the other breakout sessions, and to hear how I inadequately report back this conversation, because I never feel like I'm able to do a very good job of it. But I'll see you all in the big room, and thanks so much to everybody and our visiting team especially for joining us.
It was great to see you all.